Howdy, my fellow time travelers! Jump with us into the past in search of the origins and earliest evidence of tattoos. You can love or hate them, but there's no denying that tattoos have a fascinating history. Humans have marked their bodies with tattoos for thousands of years. Ancient art and archaeological finds of possible tattoo tools suggest tattooing was practiced in the Upper Paleolithic period in Europe. According to the Smithsonian magazine, for a long time, the earliest known examples found on human remains were Egyptian and were present on several female mummies, dating to circa 2000 BC. But following the more recent discovery of the tattoos on the Iceman on the Italian-Austrian border in 1991, this date has been pushed back over 3000 years when it was carbon dated at around 5200 years old. Based on archaeological evidence from ancient Egypt, the tattoo was exclusively found on females. Why? The 3000-year-old mummies have tattooed images of sheep, bulls, and mysterious lines. In ancient Egypt, mummies found with tattoos were usually dismissed by the excavators, who seemed to assume that they were women of dubious status, described in some cases as dancing girls. Nevertheless, the female mummies had been buried at Delbari, in an area associated with royal and elite burials, and we know that at least one of the women, described as a royal concubine, was actually a high-status priestess named Amunet, as revealed by her funerary inscriptions. But there are many researchers who believe that the tattooing of ancient Egyptian women had a therapeutic role and functioned as a permanent form of amulet during the very difficult time of pregnancy and birth. This is supported by the patterns of distribution largely around the abdomen on top of the thighs and breasts, and would also explain the specific types of designs, in particular the net-like distribution of dots applied over the abdomen. During pregnancy, this specific pattern would expand in a protective fashion in the same way bead nets were placed over wrapped mummies to protect them and keep everything in. Who made the tattoos? It may well be that the older women of a community who created the tattoos for the younger women, but there is no written evidence about that. What instruments did they use? It's possible that an implement dated to circa 3000 BC, best described as sharp metal points set in a wooden handle, was discovered at the site of Abydos, may have been used to create tattoos. At that time, the ink recipes consisted of Egyptian pine bark, corroded bronze, vinegar, vitriol, leek juice, and insect eggs. Now, that Bunny will bring to you the rest of this tattoo ink history. Enjoy!
Hello. In China, cemeteries throughout the northwest, and in particular around the Tarim Basin, have revealed several tattooed mummies, with West Asian, Indo-European physical traits and cultural materials. These date from between 2100 and 550 BC. In ancient China, tattoos were considered a barbaric practice and were often referred to in literature depicting bandits, folk heroes, or convicted criminals' faces. Marco Polo, the Venetian merchant and explorer who traveled through Asia along the Silk Road between 1271 and 1295, wrote, "Many come hither from Upper India to have their bodies painted with the needle, in the way we have elsewhere described, there being many adepts at this craft in the city." But before Marco Polo, Julius Caesar around 50 BC wrote in his manuscript, Gallic Wars, "All Britons paint themselves with woad, which turns the skin a bluish-green color, hence their appearance is all the more horrific in battle. Sounds a little like Mel Gibson in Braveheart, doesn't it? But in some places, the use of the tattoo was for terrorizing the enemy. In ancient Greece and during the Roman Empire, tattoos were used to penalize slaves, criminals, and prisoners of war. With the rise of Christianity, tattooing became increasingly associated with paganism and the criminal class, and was prohibited in Europe under the first Christian Roman Emperor Constantine. Many Native American tattoos were made using sharpened bone, rock, or other tools to carve the tattoo into the flesh. After the tattoos would be filled with soot or natural dyes to stain the wound. Many tribes were differentiated by their tattoos. Different markings signified a different tribe and the region the tribe was from. Many of these tattoos held mystical or spiritual meanings for those who were adorned with them. Even in the modern age, this belief remains prevalent in many tribes. These mystical or supernatural Native American tattoos were believed to give the wearer supernatural powers or strength. A similar concept was discovered for Native Americans who were tattooed with certain animals, emulating their strength. Also, after winning a battle or war, men would receive a tattoo symbolizing their conquest and victory. Many British and others on their pilgrimages to the Holy Lands throughout the 17th century were tattooed with the Jerusalem cross to commemorate their voyages, so the tattoo became a sign of enterprise. These tattoos were given within the stone walls of Razuk Inc., and today the tattoo shop is still there in the same place. For 700 years, the Razuk family has been tattooing marks of faith on Coptic Christians and those who settled in Jerusalem for 500 years. The family had learned the craft of tattooing in Egypt, where the devout wear similar inscriptions. In 1691, the pirate and explorer William Dampier brought a native named Gioli or Giolo to London from the island of Mindanao, Philippines, who had a tattooed body and became known as the Painted Prince. Between 1766 and 1779, Captain James Cook made 3 voyages to the South Pacific, the last trip ending with Cook's death in Hawaii in February 1779. When Cook and his men returned home to Europe from their voyages to Polynesia, they told tales of the tattooed savages they'd seen. The word tattoo itself comes from the Tahitian tatau, and was introduced into the English language by Cook's expedition. Martin Hildebrandt opened the first U.S. tattoo parlor in New York City, servicing clientele that included soldiers from both sides of the Civil War. His daughter Nora rose to fame in the 1890s when she toured with the Barnum and Bailey Circus as the Tattooed Lady. Maud Stevens Wagner was an American circus performer. She was the first known female tattoo artist in the United States. Wagner was born in 1877 in Lyon County, Kansas. While traveling with circuses and sideshows, where she was working as an aerialist, she met Gus Wagner, a tattoo artist who described himself as the most artistically marked-up man in America at the World's Fair in 1904. She had a romantic date with him for a lesson in tattooing, and several years later they were married. Together they had a daughter, Lativa, who started tattooing at the age of 9, and went on to become a tattoo artist herself. When it was introduced to the Western world, it was mainly popular among sailors, but had gained nationwide popularity by the 1970s. In 1891, the first electric tattoo machine was invented and patented by the tattoo artist Samuel O'Reilly. The tattoo gun stemmed from Edison's electric pen. O'Reilly added needles and an ink reservoir. The Edison pen was a handheld, reciprocating puncturing device designed for making paper stencils. Its form and function made it an apt candidate for tattooing. Edison actually patented several stencil pens in the 1870s that could have been adapted for tattooing, had they been manufactured. In fact, the tattooing potential of his inventions was so evident, it was recognized almost right from the start. In 1878, nearly 13 years before O'Reilly's patent was in place, an anonymous contributor of the alias Fa Fra Fresh wrote a letter to the editor of the Brooklyn Eagle newspaper, proposing that Edison's recently published stencil pen patent could be transformed into a tattooing machine with just a few minor adjustments. This person dubbed the conceptual machine as the teletattograph. Were tattooers already using electric tattoo machines by 1878 then? The Brooklyn Eagle letter certainly seems to be a game changer. Logic follows that once an electric tattoo machine was envisioned, it was only a matter of time before one was made. But we shouldn't draw any conclusions just yet. As it stands now, there's no proof tattooers were working with electric tattoo machines this early on. Until the late 1880s, newspaper reports only reference hand tools. That being said, electric tattooing did not begin with O'Reilly's 1891 patent either. It was introduced at least several years prior. The latter half of the 1880s may have been the breakthrough period. Existing evidence points to electric tattooing as a more recent phenomenon, and additional reports show substantial progression from that time forward. O'Reilly confirmed in an 1897 interview that he developed his first machine right when electrical gadgets came into general use. Though, an 1888 New Rochelle Pioneer newspaper article described him tattooing with the traditional needles in a bunch when the technology was on the horizon. In 1889 and 1891, respectively, O'Reilly claimed the creations of Tom Sidonia and George Melvin made a sensation on the dime show stage exhibiting their electrically tattooed art. Also in 1890, an electrically tattooed man, George Kelly, also known as Kolovanen, took to the stage supporting the telltale lettering on his back, tattooed by O'Reilly. Tattooed man and tattoo artist, Professor John Williams, had apparently picked up electric tattooing in this period as well. Throughout the 1880s, Williams performed on the United States dime show circuit at venues such as the World's Museum in Boston and Worth's Museum in New York. Sometime between December of 1889 and January of 1890, he made his way to England, where he awed the museum audiences by tattooing his wife, Madame Ondena, on stage with a new method he said was discovered by himself and Professor O'Reilly of New York. As he assured in a January 11, 1890 London-era advertisement, his act was startling, astonishing, interesting, and novel, and lively. Also, a perfectly safe and painless performance. The frontier story of Olive Oatman enthralled the country when it happened in the mid-1800s, and it's still a source of fascination today. In 1850, the entire Oatman family traveled to the American Southwest along with other members of the Mormon religion. The Oatman family, Royce, Mary, and their children, who ranged in age from 17 to 1, were approached by a group of Native Americans on February 18, 1851, who asked the family to hand over their guns, food, and tobacco. When Royce Oatman refused, the Native Americans attacked the family. Both Royce and Mary Oatman were killed, as were 4 of their 7 children, including the baby. The 15-year-old Olive Oatman and her sister Mary Ann were kidnapped. The details of Oatman's captivity remained unclear, but it is thought that she and her sister were captured by the Tolkapaya tribesmen after their family was massacred. After a year with the Tolkapaya, they were traded to a group of Mojaves. It is thought that she was adopted into the family of a prominent tribal leader, and that she did not attempt to contact white settlers during her period with the Mojaves. During their time with the Mojave people, both Olive Oatman and her sister were given facial tattoos. Using blue cactus dye, the sisters' chins were adorned with a series of lines and shapes that Olive claimed was the Mojave custom of marking slaves. In reality, the Mojave people used facial tattoos as a way to indicate that a person was a member of the tribe after they died and entered into the afterlife, so they could be reunited with their departed ancestors. With that in mind, it seems as though the chin tattoos were more of a way of showing that the Oatman sisters had been accepted into the tribe. Sometime around 1855 or 1856, the region experienced a devastating drought, and food became scarce. Olive reported that her sister died of starvation during that time. Olive Oatman didn't know that her brother, Lorenzo, had survived the attack on her family. For several years, she believed that her entire family, save for Mary Ann, had been slaughtered. That may be why she didn't reveal herself to the group of white railroad surveyors who lived near her village for more than a week in February 1854. 5 years after her kidnapping, when she was 19, Olive Oatman was released after a messenger arrived at the village with word that the authorities at Fort Yuma in Arizona had learned that a white woman was living among the Mojave people. They demanded that the Mojave either release her or send her to Fort Yuma to testify she wanted to stay with them. It took quite a bit of persuading, but Olive Oatman finally agreed to travel to Fort Yuma, a journey that took more than 2 weeks. Olive Oatman was soon reunited with her brother Lorenzo. Their reunion was extensively covered by the press, and the story was circulated around the world. The Nazis tattooed numbers on the arms of Jews during the Holocaust to dehumanize concentration camp inmates and identify their corpses. But the SS also had blood group tattoos. It was a small black ink tattoo located on the underside of the left arm, usually near the armpit. They were worn by members of the Waffen-SS in Nazi Germany during World War II to identify the individual's blood type. After the war, the tattoo was taken as evidence of being part of the Waffen-SS, leading to potential arrest and prosecution. A recent invention by scientists at Harvard University could be what you're looking for, where they developed an erasable tattoo ink. Though it won't wash off in the shower, the ink structure makes it easier for lasers to remove tattoos. Erasable tattoo ink gains popularity among those who stencil their sweetheart's name on their bicep, as the design is less regrettable after a breakup. Who's the most tattooed man on Earth? The world record holder in number of tattoos is Gregory Paul McLaren, whose skin is 100% covered with tattoos. After him comes Tom Leppard, born in 1936. His skin was covered with tattoos, only 99%. The most expensive tattoo in the world cost $924,000. It is done with half-carat diamonds encrusted into the skin instead of ink. The tattoo was worn by South African model and Szymanski brand ambassador Minkie van der Westhuizen and took more than 8 hours to create. Szymanski used a water-based adhesive to affix the diamonds to the model. No one else has ever had it done. What can you do if you're vegan? A lot of tattoo inks are also made out of soot ashes from burnt animal bones. But you can request a vegan ink. These kinds of inks use carbon or logwood to create a black color and a vegetable-based glycerin, as well as witch hazel or ethanol. Here's some weird things about tattoos. Theodore Roosevelt was a pioneer of modern masculinity, including tattoos. As a young man, he had the Roosevelt family crest inked onto his chest. Winston Churchill spent his military career in the army. He had a naval anchor tattooed on his arm, and allegedly his mother, Lady Randolph Churchill, had a snake tattooed on her wrist. Barbie tried to get trendy, and for a stretch of time you could actually buy a tattooed Barbie doll, known as Butterfly Art Barbie. She was released with a butterfly tattoo on her abdomen, but there was backlash from parents who didn't want their children to be influenced by tattooed dolls. The most popular tattoo in the world is a heart, and the second is an angel motif. The government of Meiji, Japan had outlawed tattoos in the 19th century, a prohibition that stood for 70 years before being repealed in 1948. But in 2012, all new tattoos were forbidden for employees of the city of Osaka. This was done because of the strong connection of tattoos with the Yakuza, after an Osaka official threatened a school child by showing his tattoo. Do you know other strange facts about tattoos? Leave a comment now, your opinion matters. And before you get your own tattoo, explore the different meanings, origins, and history related to them. And if you want to become a time traveler, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this strange story told by an alien and her imaginary friend, a pair that otherwise can't be found anywhere. If you would like to support us on Patreon, you can find a link in the description, as well as our store. In our store, you can get an exclusive Halloween-themed t-shirt, sticker, and mug. And of course, stay safe with a MyStoryYourStory mask.
If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, press thumbs down twice, just to be sure. Take it easy. Peace. Oh, by the way, I'm an alien. But not that kind of alien. Tattoo, 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 tattoo.